Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm back, and it is I, Dungeon Master Dave, not to be confused with any other potential Dungeon Master Daves out there. As I said before, my name is Dave, and I'm a Dungeon Master, and that's why I'm calling myself that. So if there's any other Dungeon Master Daves out there, it's just pure coincidence. But anyway, last time we talked about in setting creation, um, any type of inhabitants or races that you may populate your world with that you allow players to choose from to make their characters. Well, this week we're going to consider your class choices. And how are we going to go about considering class choices? Well, there are quite a few ways. There, well, first off, when considering your class choice, like, what you want to allow the players to choose from, I would say, most importantly, based on your setting. Um, like what type of characters would you have in your setting? Like what type of characters do you think would develop in this world? Um, and go from there. And I believe, certain settings, they may have their own unique classes, or some may have the just generic Dungeons and Dragons classes. Um, and sometimes they may have the generic classes, but may have one or two unique classes to kind of supplement in there. Um, and I'm sure we all know the classic, classes there. Like there's the warrior or the fighter, whatever you want to call it. There's the rogue or thief, um, the wizard, mage, the cleric, healer. The druid, which it's kind of like I don't know how it became what it is today and how that concept came about, but it's kind of morphed in this controlling nature, summoning animals, morphing into animals type of person there. Now that's what it's known as. The bard, the paladin, the monk, the ranger, the barbarian, the sorcerer. These are like the classics. These are the ones that you might see in many fantasy games. Um, Definitely a staple for Dungeons and Dragons for a long time. I didn't get too into fourth edition. I know they had some different ideas, like they had the warlord and such, and a couple other classes, but I didn't get too much into it myself. Um, but now you must decide. All right, how am I personally going to go about the classes here? How am I going to decide what's right for my world and what's wrong for my world? Well, look at your setting as a whole. Is it just like a town, city, country, a planet, a continent, a few planets? What year does it take place in too? That could also determine what might be appropriate. What type of technology is available? Well, not year, but what type of technology is available? Like, is it medieval technology? Is it like cave people technology? Is it modern day technology? Or is it futuristic? So that right there can also help have a hand in determining what type of classes your character could play. Um, or not your character, but your players. What type of class your players play. So what we're going to write down is think about setting. And then, or you know what? Instead of think about setting, let's put consider setting. 2, technology available. You know what? That capital S is going to bother me. There we go. Yeah, let's put consider technology available. There we go. You must consider that. And then after this, I will put um, prehistoric or medieval. Did I spell that right? Damn. um, modern. Oh wait, no. Here's one. Revolutionary, modern, um, futuristic. See, these are things to consider. Um, Now, there are some classes that might blend into both. Like you can have a warrior pretty much in any of these. You know, um, you can have like your rogue agent in any of these. But the barbarian might not fit so much in modern or futuristic. The wizard maybe could work in modern and futuristic, but you might want to lean maybe towards a little more technological, like a scientist. I mean, it's not really a class, but that could, I guess, that could be a class in these types of games, or like a gunslinger, for example, if you're doing like a Wild West type of campaign. These are just some examples. And also one considering your classes. Did you like depending on the time period? Uh, Actually, we'll do in time period. Um, so consider technology available in your time period, but you also are going to want to think who would become an agent of said class. Now, what I mean by that is, like, what's the reason for this class? What's the purpose? And who would fulfill that role? So, for example, the classic warrior archetype. Who fills that role? Well, anyone who needs to go to battle directly. Who might fight on the front lines, who might be an archer in an armory. Armory. In an army. Yep, little blunder there. Uh, those types of folks. And they're going to be the ones that might try to defend a territory or try to take over a territory or defend an ideal or to eradicate an ideal. So those would be the warrior type. So then you might think, all right, well, what's a rogue type of class? Who would fulfill that type of niche? And those are people that kind of want to do things indirect. I'll call it direct, indirect. Um, but kind of like behind the scenes, almost like they might not work with you directly, or if they do, you're not going to know about it because their job is to not be known whatsoever, right? Their job is to stay hidden, stay anonymous, and kind of manipulate things from the background. And when I think of that, some characters that come to mind are George R. R. Martin's Game of Thrones. There, you have the Spider. He's a good example. Petyr Baelish. He was a good example. They kind of work behind the scenes. They're like an example of like a rogue type of character. Everyone thinks, if you think like traditional fantasy rogue for Dungeons and Dragons, you're thinking about the little sneak thief that walks around on tiptoes. He's got the little sack of gold that he's acquired, and he's got a club, and he's ready to bash people over the head and steal their money. I mean, I guess that's more of a straightforward type of rogue, but when I think rogue, I think of someone who's more behind the scenes, more, you're just not sure what side they're on. Um, and if you're thinking technology, like, oh well, what type of tech person are we thinking of? Are we thinking of like a computer whiz? Um, I guess a doctor could fit into any uh, pre-existing archetype, but you're thinking of like, oh, maybe modern day doctor. Those are kind of like class roles to consider. Uh, so let's jot down a couple ideas. Traditional fantasy, modern tech, and we'll do futuristic. Now you're probably wondering, all right, well, what's traditional fantasy, and how do we define that? Most people will see it as four core roles, and we'll put it as warrior, um, the rogue, and I'll just put anyone with indirect/direct skill set. The magic user, person who uses magic to get around obstacles, and of course a healer/buffer of type. Um, and these are typically played by, you know, like your warrior might be fighter, monk, barbarian, uh, paladin, ranger. Now, your rogue types, depending on your direct indirect types, might be the actual rogue itself, thief, assassin, the bard, especially since Dungeons and Dragons always kind of had like pickpockets or open locks or things like that, if I remember correctly. Um, Certain wizards, certain magic casters, uh, but a wizard, they could play that role. Well, traditionally they wouldn't. I'd say maybe we'll take it off. Like maybe certain monks, uh, ranger, magic user. This one's pretty straightforward. So a wizard, sorcerer, druid, uh, cleric, healer buffer, people who are mainly in charge of healing or buffing. This one might be the cleric, druid, bard, paladin, and then of course there's other people who can take roles, but these are your traditional fantasy types here. So then we're going to look at modern technology here, and we're going to consider what we have. We're going to have the soldier. We might have the computer whiz, scientist, pilot, maybe a teacher. These tend to be like jobs in the real world. Doctor, and let's put what they might do. Here's your tank. Here's your rogue. You know, this one skill junkie. Wow. Or slash support. Uh, or AoE. Really, it depends on what the scientist does. Pilot. Come back to that one. Here's your skill junkie right here. Doctor. Healer. Pilot. Maybe an alternate tank. Um, Party transportation. I don't know, not really a role, I guess, but just an idea that you might see in some games. And this is all off the cuff. Like I don't think about any of this ahead of time. It's a bad habit I have, really. I should probably take notes and write it all down and have my stuff organized ahead of time, but I don't. So, all right, so futuristic. Jeez, what are we gonna have? I guess it depends on what setting you're thinking of. If this was Star Wars, you'd have like Jedi and Sith Lord and things like that. For here, I don't know. This one's a lot harder for me for sci-fi. So it'd probably just be easier if I could just moved on and left this one alone for now. Maybe come back to it if I think of anything. I think that'd probably be the best. Yeah, what do you think? You think I should move on? Just say yes or no in the comments. Let me know. And I always have a hard time getting Twitch working on my phone. And the only reason I like to is so I can see the comments from here so I don't have to switch back and forth. So if you folks are at home watching it, I can interact with you at an easier level than if I didn't have access to my Twitch. So anyway, futuristic. Oh, I know. Uh, Psychic. Because apparently you have psionics if you're, if you're from the future. Some type of alien warrior type. Yeah, you have alien warrior powers, whatever that means. This one's a lot hard. Maybe an empath. They have some type of empathetic powers. Not much different from the psychic, but maybe they work off of human emotions and whatnot. Alien warrior. You know what? We can leave the warrior in that one there. Actually, a lot of the ones that work for modern tech also work for future tech. So we'll put soldier, uh, you know, doctor, those types. And I'm sure you get the idea from these, what you can do. So when considering your setting, this is what we have, or, where you're going to get the ideas of what classes you want. So technology and who would take on the role of this class. And these are some kind of ideas. I mean, you can always come up with your own. This is just not set in stone. Just kind of just the way certain settings work. Like for example, too, some settings have unique character classes. So if you're thinking Dark Sun, they have psionics, for example, that's unique to their setting. Of course, you can use those in any other setting. There's nothing saying you can only use it in Dark Sun, but they introduced the psionics. Eberron has the Artificer. What's his name? Matthew Mercer, he has the gunslinger in his setting, if I'm not mistaken. So these are all kind of things that, hey, my setting could use this. Let me add that in there. Let me bring it in and see how it is. and how it works, and it fits into my world, and let's try to make it work. Let's make it their own. Um, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And then you also have, for example, the fifth edition based Adventure in Middle Earth guide. They have completely revamped classes for their own use. Some of them you can see are kind of like similar or a knockoff to other classes here, but if you take a look here real quick, they have the Scholar, which is an intelligence based. There really are no magic casters in this canonically. There's the Slayer. They're like an alternate barbarian. The Treasure Hunter, believe alternate rogue, Wanderer, think a ranger. If I'm not mistaken, a warden. I don't know, something. I haven't really played this game. And then the warrior. I'm sure we all know what that is. That's a fighter, right? Yeah, I'm sure that's a fighter. 100%. That's a fighter. I was being sarcastic that way. I know that's a fighter. Uh, but yeah, these are like an example of some alternate classes. And this is the Middle Earth setting. You use the 5th edition rules, but I'm sure you get a very Dungeons and Dragons vibe when you are playing it. You know. So let's come up with an idea for some of our own. Let me take a look up here real quick. Oh yeah. So when considering any unique classes, so unique. Wow. There we go. Brain had a long day, and sometimes the brain's like, hey, you know what? It's a little late. It's past 9 o'clock. You shouldn't be doing this to yourself. You should be getting a little rest. You know, you should be relaxing. But no, I want to do this, and I'm going to do it, brain, and you're going to let me. So shh. So unique classes. And when you're making unique class, consider these few things. What does this is still bold. I don't want it to be bold. Off with you. There we go. What does this class do? What makes this class special? Does this class contain anything that other classes can do? So, for example, if you look at we'll compare the Paladin and the Cleric, for example. The Paladin gets access to some Cleric spells, and I know the full list is not Cleric. It's not like the full Cleric list, but it can kind of do similar things. It's like, oh, I can do the healing and I can remove the diseases and the poisons. Obviously, I can't do it at the efficiency that a cleric can, but I still have similar options and opportunities at later levels. The paladin's big thing, of course, is smites, but they have like a small little blend in there, especially in earlier editions of the game. The paladin was, anyway, from my opinion, was always seen as like a blend of the fighter and the cleric together. Just as some people might see the ranger as a blend of like a druid and the fighter together. So it's kind of like what that is, and the bard was like, "Hey, you know what? Let's make a fighter mage thief and blend it in one class and call it the bard, and he plays instruments." That's it's kind of like what I feel like the old versions of them were, and sort of slowly carried over to newer versions. But the bard has become definitely more jack of all trades. They added healing in later editions. I believe it was fourth edition that added healing to the bard, if I remember correctly, or was it third? I don't know. But I do remember the bard being only be able to get up to 6 level spells. And actually, if you go back into older editions, at least first and second, if I'm not mistaken, only the wizard or mage, if you want to call it the mage at the time, could get 9th level spells. And that's because that's what they were. They had D4 hit points, so they got full spell access, right? They were the ones that could go from 1 to 9. If you looked at the cleric and the druid, however, they can only get to 7th level spells. And I believe there was kind of a like a reason for that. For one, they had D8 hit points. For two, they could wear armor, wield better weapons. They had some other abilities, like the cleric had turn undead, and the druid had wild shape. But it's also, if you look at the numbers, right? 9 is like an arcane number, so that would get tied in with like the wizard. like kind of like the arcane lore, that arcane myth, and it would be in there to represent that. Seven is kind of like to represent that lucky, that number, that holy number, the it's like considered a holy number in some religions, the number seven, and that's why I believe the spell slots, not only for the other mechanical reasons, went up to level seven, but also because of that holy representation. And then if you looked at other classes, such as the paladin and the ranger, it was either fourth or fifth level spells. I can't remember, but the reason is because they got D10 hit points and they got even maybe even better armor and weapon selection. They could specialize and such like that. They can do two slots instead of one for a weapon, and they had all these abilities. And the bard, they would get up to sixth level, and the reason why they can go a little bit higher is because, but not as high, was because one, they dropped their hit die. Instead of it being a D10 or a D8, it was a D6. They had slight thieving options, and if I recall correctly, it was like pickpockets and open locks, and those were like, in my opinion, like the reason why they were set like for that, mechanically, was because of all those differences. It wasn't because they like sporadic numbers. I think it was certain representations uh, of numbers in like a, I don't want to say a cryptic way, but if if you know like certain things in lore, it might stick out to you a bit. Whereas if you're just kind of like playing the game for mechanics wise and you're not into, you know, um, like religious lore or like arcane lore, you might not know. Uh, but yeah, from a mechanic standpoint, the bard, I don't know why six would be the number. Like I said, I think it just had to do with more mechanics there than trying to be like, hey, this is a seven or a nine to represent these. This is more just because they have certain abilities and features. And the bard also had music too, which would add to it. But anyway, enough of being off topic, and a miniature, in my opinion, history lesson. Those are just my opinion on the mechanical choices of the spell levels. Now it's all just like kind of one uh, unique fashion. I believe it's been that way since third edition, at least for these. Like druids and clerics also get ninth level, um, like they needed it. uh, bards still remain. No, they're full casters now too. Like they need it, which does make them pretty powerful. I do like it. I do like having bards at ninth level. It feels pretty nice. It feels right at home. Whereas the paladins and the rangers are right at fifth level. They call that half level casting, but that's because they don't get cantrips. Because if you look at it from cantrip all the way up to ninth level, it's 10 levels right there, and they go from one to five, so it's half. Whereas I believe the arcane archer and the eldritch knight go up to third level. They get cantrips though, don't they? Either way, that's not important. I'm getting way too off topic. So, enough of my inane ramblings. What does this class do? What makes this class special? And does this class contain anything that other classes can do? Because it's not bad to step on a class's toes a little bit, but if you step on it too much and it almost becomes a mirror, it might turn some people away. It might be like, well, why is this one class exist and this class exists, but they're practically the same? Um, Stepping on the toes to a certain extent, I feel, is not a bad option because maybe people like a certain package of options but don't like another. And I get, okay, that's why archetypes come into play. We give you this broad thing here, this broad, spectrum for a class, and then the archetypes flesh it out in this direction a little bit more. One thing that I would like to see archetypes do, at least in my own, like in a setting, and I could bring to life in my own personal setting, would be combat oriented archetypes, skill based, kind of behind the scene type archetypes, and then there's the magic based archetypes, and have that kind of maybe available for all classes. Have like maybe the combat oriented bard, which they had the College of Valor, which is pretty cool, and then they have the well, I guess they have the skill and magic bard in one with the College of Lore. But what if you had archetypes that for like a wizard, like the combat based wizard or the skill based wizard, or I know the wizard's magic based, but maybe one that focuses on a magic archetype gives them more powerful magic. things like that, or the combat-based warrior, which I guess is most of them, the champion or the battle master. We're just talking straight vanilla here. We're not talking like expansions, you know. Obviously, with more printed books, you get more options, but we're just talking about what's in the base book here. And one good thing about the archetypes too was that they almost filled in the niche of prestige classes from third edition. Like you saw some prestige classes kind of make it in there, like Arcane Tricksters and Eldritch Knights, and in later editions too with Arcane Archers and such. And that was pretty cool. People, I'm sure people really like that. I like that. It made the edition unique. Um, but when you're considering your personal, classes for your setting, you can take the vanilla classes. That's fine. Do that. That's what they're there for, right? That's what it's there for. But you also have the option of, hey, your own unique ones. So let's say you wanted a class that runs around and throws TVs at people, right? That's its main feature. It throws TVs, they explode, and then they turn into keyboards that play music. And everyone gets enchanced by the music, and, if they fail a saving throw. Let's say you want to have a class revolve around that. Personally, I wouldn't make a class around that, but hey, you're making crazy games, you come up with crazy ideas, you have silly inside jokes with your friends, and you get a little carried away, and that's what happens. Well, let's figure out, what do we call this? The TV chucking class. Well, we can call it a techno beat, right? Sure, we'll call it a techno beat. What does that mean? I don't know. What is its main features? Who cares? Well, it's just some guy who chucks TVs, right? Probably doesn't have much hit points, so he's a D6. Saves? You're going to need some strength to throw those TVs. So we're going to say strength, and probably not very smart, though. You're probably pretty dumb. Dexterity, because you probably want to dodge those things, right? So we're formulating a class right now. This is the TV chucking class. This guy, this guy, but this person specializes in chucking TVs. Now, let's see what we have here. What skills would a TV chucker have? Athletics, right? Choose two. Yeah. Now you might think this is silly. Maybe a bit of acrobatics. Uh, Deception, so they can lie to you and get your TV. Yeah, intimidation too. Intimidate you and handing over your TV. It's all about the TV, you know. The bigger the TV, the better, because TVs do more damage. You know what I mean? By the way, I don't take this portion of the video serious. So this is for entertainment purposes only. It's just to kind of get an idea, get in the silly little person's mind. Um, nope, no animal handling. Pickpocket wouldn't work. Stealth might work. You know. Boom. Persuasion. Master of social skills. I will tell you, because they gotta find different ways to get TVs. So they can lie to you, be like blah 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 blah, and then somehow end up your TV. They can intimidate you. Give me your TV right now. I want that TV, son of a bitch. Stealth, sneak around. Yeah, you're gonna see me grab that TV. Whoop. And persuasion. Hey, good sir, yes, you don't need that 70-inch TV. I say, how about you give that 70-inch TV right to me? I could replace it with an 80-inch TV. There's where the deception comes in a week, I tell you. Yes, just give me some time. It really depends. Um, what other skills are available? Can't remember. Medicine ain't gonna work. History, nope. Religion, nope. Nature, nope. There's probably not too many good skills. So yeah, we'll give those. All right, this person's just gonna. It's techno beat. He's gonna chuck TVs. Now they are proficient in. Yes, proficiencies. No armor. They don't wear armor. Simple weapons and TVs. Now, see, we kind of formulated an idea of a class here. Obviously, this one's strictly silly, but maybe your campaign is, maybe your campaign world is, maybe your campaign world is a Saturday morning cartoon, right? Could be possible. Maybe your campaign world is an acid trip, like some drug-induced coma. It really is up to you, and it could be anything. So that's kind of the idea I have there. Now, can this class do things that other classes can do? No, I don't really think any other classes are chucking TVs that explode into keyboards that entrance people with music. Nope, 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 nope. Does it step on any toes? Maybe the alchemist, chucking stuff, having area effect go off, but that's okay because maybe in this world the alchemist doesn't work. So now that we've moved on from that, let's talk about the player choice. Wait a minute, no, class role. What am I thinking about? Player choice. All right, silly me. So when we're thinking of class role, there should be a few ones. The leader types, and every class doesn't have to be a leader, but some could have the potential to be a leader, especially with the way they work. Like, for example, if there were a warlord type character, and they could give off as a reaction or maybe in a bonus action uh, buffs or extra action economy to other characters. That's almost like a battlefield influence there. They might play a leadership type role. Um, like, hey, how about you move uh, that way, or extra attack for you, so on and so on. Someone to guide the party. I guess paladins do that too. A lot of people, paladins is a popular one, even though they're seen as stuffy. Like, oh, not the paladin. I can't run around and sneak and steal and murder people. That dang old paladin. Um, Fighters used to be traditionally the leader role, believe it or not, in older editions, which is kind of weird but cool, I guess. Like, oh, let's select the fighter. Um, Bards, maybe. I don't know if I'd want the bard leading my party, but bards. But who's the leader? What class could you see being the leader? And it's not just one. You might want to have the players have several options of what has leadership potential. You know. Yeah, let me put that there. Leadership potential. Potential. Wow. All right. Now, also the tank. We all know what the tank does, right? Take damage, deal damage, frontline. These are your meat shields. They go, they attack. Um, not all these roles need to be available, and some classes might have more than one available to them. But the tank, and this is very basic. This is numbers. Leaders roleplay. Tank is numbers. You also got to think of class role. That's two things to think of. Uh, Roleplay and combat. And some of you might think exploration. Um, that can be built into the role play a little bit. Um, and combat is, you know, you roll the dice, you get this, you kill that. But the tank, take damage, deal damage, and frontline, typically warrior, barbarian, paladin, sometimes the ranger, sometimes the monk, sometimes really high constitution warlock, stuff like that. So now here's the ones. Quest drivers. Now you're probably wondering, ooh, what is a quest driver character? Wow. Well, I'm glad you asked. There are going to be characters that might have certain maybe class features, or maybe not even class features, but just the way the character description's written. They can kind of help the DM's hand to guide the quest. Like for example, like let's say there's a shaman, right? And the shaman might have to find a spirit animal companion, right? Well, that is a quest point right there. The DM could be like, you know what? It doesn't need to be a main feature quest, but it can be a side quest. And the party can kind of go on this with the shaman, help them find the spirit animal, and gather, to help explain, why this spirit animal comes to the shaman and becomes one of its class features. Things like that. Quest drivers. Um, and I feel like it's a very solid, important role play or class role. You know, like who are going to help drive the quests. Obviously, that's not necessary, but I personally like it. I feel like it adds to the campaign. Like if a good example I would say would be, I forget his name. Was it Amon? Amon? In Baldur's Gate 2, he was the fighter cleric and he was trying to become a paladin. And if you made the right choices, he became a paladin. If you made the wrong choices, he could never become a paladin. And he stayed a fighter cleric. And it had to do with avenging his sister or something like that, if I remember correctly. This is years ago. Baldur's Gate 2 was a long time ago. And I played it when it came out. So you could just imagine. I think it was 1998. So that's like, or was 1998 the original Baldur's Gate? I don't remember. It's been a long time. It has been a long time. But yeah, quest drivers. And I'm sure you look in the book, right? You look right here. You could probably find some things that could be quest drivers on a character. In fact, let's go on a little quest ourselves and take a look and see if we can find any. But let's not spend too long on it. We don't want to eat up all the time with this. Boom. Ooh, like archetypes. Sometimes finding an archetype is always a good quest driver, and that could be one that almost every class could join and have a hand in. Uh, but I'm looking for something that just screams it to me. You know, I know like finding your spirit animal would be a good one, or maybe like a I don't know if you got cohorts or something. If that was a class feature for some reason, or how you get your magic as an Eldritch Knight. That's like kind of a quest driver, right? How do you explain just getting magic out of nowhere? I know there's mechanics for it, but it's kind of a quest driver, right? Like, all right, let's do the small little gap from level 2 to 3 to kind of fill this in, and it's not necessary. You don't have to do it all the time, but it's a neat little thing to add in once in a while. And you can pick and choose your quest drivers. Like when you look at a class, you can pick and choose. I wouldn't keep favoring one person over and over again, though. Some classes may have more quest driver potential. But yeah, how does Druid get its wild shape? I don't know. I don't understand the Druid. I just don't. Ah, like it's ingrained in our brains that they are this way. But were Druids really? Was this really like? I don't want to say mythological, but Druids from Western Europe. Is this how they were? Did they morph into animals? Did they have nature magic? Did they summon animals? Or is this something else? I feel like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem right to me. Like this is the druid. I feel like the druid's a good alternate priest class, which I believe it was in D&D first edition. But this whole like nature thing, like they were pagans, you know. And if I recall, pagans were kind of like scientists of their time, but also like, yeah, they worship the sun and the stars and the moon. They were also astrologers, and geologists. And if you look at the way they build their mounds, they would line up with like sometimes times of the year, like a certain time of the year, and then the sun would hit this mound mirror, not well, window perfectly, and then it would illuminate it this way, or line up with certain constellations. Those were the druids, right? These are like primal beings. These are just like half animal, half person. They're a kindred spirit between nature and reality. Well, nature is reality, but like I'm just lost. You see where I am? I mean, obviously, if I was to put it in their definition, oh yeah, it's a nature caster, and not just theirs, but it's just the way I feel like it's been. Maybe it comes from like a Gygax's interpretation of it for a game. Maybe I'm reading too deep into it, but I just don't see a druid as this. I would personally put this more as a shaman, and I'm pretty biased, but shaman is more on a global scale. And I get it. Dungeons and Dragons was originally based on war game miniatures, and it was based on European history and such like that. That's why a lot of these things scream, I don't know, like Europe to me. Like the druid and the cleric and the bard and the barbarians and the monks. Even though there are other monks in the world, you have Shaolin monks, Buddhist monks. Uh, but I'm thinking of like the friar monk there. Like those. I'd call monks martial artists if I could. I mean, I still can. It doesn't stop me. Paladins, those were like Templars. That's all that is. But that's getting a little nitpicky. So, Quest Drivers. That's where we left off. Let me throw this book down and stop cherry picking because they did a wonderful job and it is a wonderful rule set. Wonderful people, wonderful company. I will not lie. Thoroughly enjoy the game. 10 out of 10. Would play again. Certainly. Most certainly would. So, Quest Drivers. Class features / abilities that drive personal or party quest lines. So then we have the healer. Heals the party, wipes away ailments, aids the party. Buffer gives the party extra power beyond their normal ability. See, if I just said buffs the party, some people might not understand that. They'd be like, okay, well, what is a buff? You can't use the word to describe the word, right? So that's why I broke it down to gives the party extra power beyond their normal ability. Because if I have a 10 strength and I get buffed in strength, that might bring it up to a 12, a 13, whatever, and I am now stronger. And it's not permanent. Nope. And there's the debuffer. Takes away power from a target's normal ability. And these are combat based too, like the healer, the buffer, and the debuffer. Well, actually, the healer could kind of be role play as well. That's one unique thing about healing. That can be role play or combat. You can do it in either or, right? Yeah. So let me put this here. RP, combat. RP, RP, or combat. Buffer, combat, and debuffer, combat. And there are others too. Um, like the skilled one has as many skills / features to overcome everyday or not so everyday tasks. Well, that doesn't sound quite right. Has many skills and features to overcome every day, or because if it's an everyday task, it shouldn't be that hard. Extraordinary. There we go. Magic. Wow. There we go. This one can also be RP / combat. Uses magic to overcome obstacles or it is. This one generally is RP. The skilled one there. And these are just some of the examples here. And you want to see, okay, what can this class do? Right? Like, what can, out of these 8, there might be more, but I'm going to have 8 right now from what you can see. What can this class do from these 8 that will make it fun and enjoyable or unique? So, what did I do for Mia? Dungeon Masters, Dave's Brewery of Races. All right, well, let's check this out. There we go. Here's my brewery of classes. So, when we're looking at the classes, we're going to think, all right, what would people like to play? Well, oh, let's get these numbered. Artificer. And a lot of people might have the image from this game that artificers create magical items and things like that. I can't really be further from the truth. An artificer. I mean, I guess they're more like a craft person, um, highly skilled craft person. And I guess that would be kind of lame to put in a game like, okay, well, why would I play a game with magic fairies and elves if they just create lame stuff, right? Like, why would I put that in there? And I get that. I totally get that. So you got to kind of put some interesting spin on a class. And we'll get back to all these and what potential subclasses or niches they may have after. But the artificer will be kind of like your inventor creator type. They'll specialize in something. One thing I like to kind of think back to is Tubal Cain. He's an artificer of brass and iron. He was supposed to be a master smith, the best in the land. He created weapons and armor like no one else. He showed others how to make weapons and armor and kind of taught them to them, and they learned the craft from Tubal Cain. But he was supposed to be unrivaled in his ability to use brass and iron and to bend it to his will and to make these masterpieces. So when I think artificer, I think Tubal Cain, and that is it's kind of where I'm drawing inspiration from. Is Tubal Cain there? And some of you may not be familiar with Tubal Cain. That's okay. He's a figure from religious texts. He's supposed to be a descendant of Cain, who, uh, like I said, has learned to make these weapons of war and stuff like that, to make armor and weapons and stuff. He also is also thought to have made smithing tools too, which is kind of cool. Like, oh, you can make horseshoes, and you can make hammers, and you can make tongs, and you can make this and that. Um, well, another one is the bard. Uh, just a poet, right? Sing songs, tell stories, but that's not cool. However, bards are kind of seen as like magical, and I get it and I don't. I don't like it that they directly are magical. I'd like to think that their music or their performance or their poetry gives off a magic like effect. So just imagine someone singing a song and that song resonates with you on a certain level, right? And you're just in tune with it and you're feeling it. Well, it puts that effect on you that normally the spell would, for example. So say, for example, the bard is just, regaling a verse about, um, just being alone and being invisible and no one caring and blah, 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 right? But it resonates with you, the character, right? Well, in turn, that could be like them casting invisibility on you, like you just get so wrapped up in that song and you're like, oh man, I really feel it on this deep level. Like, I am invisible. Wow. Like, nobody loves me, or whatever, just however the character views it from a roleplay standpoint. And through this feeling of being invisible, uh, the world just kind of like just doesn't even take notice to them for the duration, and it acts like invisibility. For all intents and purposes, we could say it is invisibility, but it's not like the same invisibility that, hey, a sorcerer might do, like you're actually invisible. No, it's just that you're so unimportant on the cosmic scale. Because remember, once you do a hostile action when you're invisible, your invisibility goes away. If you're not doing anything that should erase your invisibility, you're not really important on an immediate or a larger scale, right? So if you're just walking the streets, no one will care. They'll just be like, they won't even take notice. They won't even think about it. You'll just walk by. not because they didn't see you, but because they just didn't feel like it was important enough. Like you're invisible to the mind, not to the eye at that point. Uh, but the bard, I always found it's kind of an obscure class. Um, Entertainer, would that be much better? I don't know. Shall we call it the entertainer? Sure, we'll call it the entertainer for now. And then you can put like other classes in there. Now, I personally never liked the idea of the barbarian being a class because I never saw it as a class, but a way to describe some people and their lifestyle. Um, I always thought the berserker was more appropriate because that's what the warriors that they're emulating are the berserkers. That would kind of go in this like blind battle rage type thing with this fury, and they would run into battle naked, and they would almost seemingly be unharmed by like weapons, and they would just like fight through their enemies, and they would suffer these immense wounds. And a lot of people believed it was they did some ritual, maybe even with mushrooms, and they went into battle just tripping balls. Now, I don't know how accurate that is. I didn't live back then. I'm not a berserker. We can only theorize on that. I don't know if there's actually any proof. Maybe they found a pouch with some mushrooms in it. I don't know. Like perfectly preserved because it's possible, right? They lived in very cold, snowy areas, so I guess it's possible to find a pouch uh, from that time period, carbon date it, and be like, hey, you know what? Maybe this is what caused the berserkers um, to have such like animalistic power. But I always like the idea of the berserker, and that's what I would personally call my barbarian class. That'd be more primal, animalistic warrior that's in tune with nature is a berserker, and I'm sticking to it. What's next? The gladiator. You're probably wondering, why not just have a fighter? Because if this is the way I look at it. If you're designing classes, right, and it's for the D&D 5e rule set for your own custom setting, if there's two ways to look at a class. If it's got enough material to flesh it out, right, more than an archetype, it probably should be a class. And only if it's unique enough to, like you wouldn't want the fighter and the warrior. Well, what's the difference? That's a little redundant, right? So the if basically if it has enough material to more material than an archetype, it should be a class. If it doesn't have enough material and you can only get a few ideas from it, then it should just be an archetype for a certain class. Find what class it goes to best, or maybe even under certain classes, put the archetype in there. That is put the archetypes in there. So like let's say there's several classes that one archetype can fit under. Do that too. There's nothing saying you can't do that. Just because they didn't do it at Wizards of the Coast doesn't mean you can't for your own personal campaign setting. And that might be interesting to have that option. Have cross archetype type of, well, have a cross class archetype. I think that would be really cool. But oh, gladiator, yes. Why is it its own class? Because that is something that I feel could use showboats and things like that. And you're like, well, why can't that just fit into a warrior archetype? Um, well, there's other ways I divide it up to make it its own class. It goes beyond the showboats, and I have enough class features. Plus, the gladiator is kind of, in my opinion, a little separate from a warrior. They're kind of like slaves that train in camp to fight each other for entertainment. So they learn how to entertain. Think of a modern day professional wrestler, right? Or MMA fighters, right? There's a difference between a martial artist and an MMA fighter. And you can say they're both martial artists, but um, a martial artist will go, they'll learn, they'll practice for self-defense, maybe health, fun. An MMA fighter is going and they're doing it for a career and they're going to entertain and they're going to beat people up. Or professional wrestlers, if you look at them. They learn the practical art of wrestling, but they also learn showboating moves that look cool but aren't really effective. But to the audience, they don't know that. Well, a gladiator, in my opinion, is kind of like a warrior, but kind of also a showman. you know? And it's like, oh, well, okay, you could just put them as a warrior archetype. But I feel like they don't have the full extent or training or ability that a warrior has. Whereas someone who's trained for war, for example, you know, might be more adept at fighting than the gladiator that is there at the slave pits to fight, so and so. That's personally why it's its own class for me. Then up next would be the Jester. This one probably could be an archetype. I always like the idea of it, though. Being its own class, maybe not. This one could probably be an archetype, uh, but I just like the idea of it. The Knight. Ooh, why can't this one be a warrior? Ugh, I feel like these are a little bit more noble here. Um, these ones are with codes. These ones have morals. And the difference between a knight and a paladin, in my opinion, is one fights for religion and a faith, and the other one fights for the kingdom, the king, the queen, the ruler, the land. And that's the big difference, in my opinion, between the knight and the paladin. However, I'm not saying that a paladin is not a knight. They are. The Knights Templar. Those are paladins. Yeah. Don't believe me? Look it up. Or what about the Knights of the Round Table? Arthur and his, right? They paladins? I believe so. I could be wrong. The Magician. I always liked the Magician. You're probably wondering, well, what the heck is a Magician? Just a magic caster? Is that your way of saying wizard? No. This is kind of like your illusionist type. Boo! Don't get too hung up on it. These are just some ideas that I'm coming up with. The Martial Artist. This is your traditional monk, right? Right here. Why choose martial artist over the term monk? Sure, you have Shaolin monk and Buddhist monk and Tibetan monk. You also have the monks over in old medieval Europe. Um, but that doesn't always scream martial artist to me, you know? Sure, the Shaolin monks practice martial arts, and some Buddhist monks and stuff may practice martial arts, but martial arts is a broader term. It's more celebrated. There's more styles. It's not a monk only thing. And some people could argue, oh, well, weapons could be a form of martial arts too. Well, that's not what this is about. I mean, there will be a style in there where you could use weapons, but this is more just about a broader term, more about really, I'd say, paying a homage to the form of martial arts. Like if you look at like Bruce Lee, for example, he wasn't a monk, he was a martial artist, right? He could run around punching people in the face and kicking them in the head. Uh, and he had, I'm sure he had a set of skills. Like if you ever watched the movie like Enter the Dragon, he's sneaking around and he's like picking locks and he's doing this. Imagine him as a D&D character, right? Man, that guy's a monk. No, that guy's a martial artist. All right, I get it. I'm a little nitpicky. Sorry, but it's my setting. My words, I'll change it. Whatever. I mean, Lord of the Rings one there had Slayer as a barbarian. Fits their world, you know? And you got to work for what fits your world. And that's what's important. So, the martial artist, I'll divide it up a little. I'll put a little flavor in there. I want to flesh it out a bit. I studied martial arts in real life. It's a part of my life. I liked it. I've done boxing in college. I did Taekwondo in college and a little after. I did Brazilian Jiu Jitsu a little bit after Taekwondo. Um, I still wish I was in martial arts today. I'm getting a little chubby. Don't laugh at my gut. Don't do it. All right. Uh, let's not talk about that. I'm not terribly huge, but I went from 175 to about 200. I blame being married. No, it's just being content and lazy. It happens to a lot of us. It's okay. But martial arts, big part of my life. I respect it. I love it. There's many different kinds. Boxing, kickboxing, fist and foot, wrestling, jujitsu, judo. So, in my setting, I'm going to pay homage to martial arts, going to expand upon it. Oh, yeah. Priest. I don't like the idea of cleric or druid. Because what is a cleric? Just a battle priest? Like part of the clergy? Uh, Nothing really screams to me. I like priest better, and why? Because I like this. I like them to have the low hit points. I want them to have the D6 hit points. I want them to have the no armor. I don't want them to maybe as a subclass, or archetype. They're going to be a cleric. Maybe as an archetype, there can be a druid. Maybe as an archetype, there could be some other things there. But I like the priest as is, and they pull on the power from their faith, from their deity, from whatever they worship. So, for example, if it's the druids, they'll pull it from nature. If it's the cleric, they'll pull it from their gods there. If it's like a voodoo priest or an obuman or Wujin or Shinjinto, Buddhism, whatever, they will pull it from their faith, and that will kind of reflect in their would it really be spells or miracles? It really depends on what you want to call it too. Do they have to be called spells? I'd say spells is more of an arcane thing. You wouldn't really give priest a spell. You would give a priest a miracle, a blessing. You would give them something that represents what they are. They're not going to be casting spells at you, right? That's more of the it's more of the wizard or the sorcerer or the witch, right? Not the priest. The priest isn't going to do that. Cleric shouldn't do that either. The druid shouldn't do that. We don't have spells. The paladin shouldn't do that. They shouldn't have spells. All right, that's no, no, no spells. Not my setting, at least. Anyway, enough finger wagging. Now, the next one up is the prophet. You're probably wondering, oh, well, how does this differ? No, 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 no. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Crap. Prophet. How does this differ from a priest? The prophet is the one who's usually an agent of the deity, has more of a connection to the deity or the faith than the priest does. And the way this is achieved, there we go, is usually through some direct divine intervention. The deity normally connects with the prophet right away. Um, there's few archetypes I have for this. Most of these I have archetypes for, I've been thinking. They're not just ones that I throw out there, besides the Jester. The Jester's kind of like, this one's might run a little over an hour. See, I don't know if I like the idea of the Ranger or the Rogue. That's, I do and I don't, I don't know what to call it, though. Maybe just keep the Rogue. You know what? We'll keep the Rogue for now. Ranger's an archetype, okay? So's Paladin. Shaman. I like this one a lot. You're probably diarrheaing your pants right now, freaking out. Why is a shaman not under a priest or something other? Then why does it get its own special little thing? You son of a bitch. Well, I feel like there's a lot of potential in a shaman. And like I said before, if you can flesh it out beyond an archetype, it deserves to be a class. Well, with enough ability, that is. And I have 3 archetypes for a shaman. And you may be like, well, it could just be a priest. It could just be one. But are they? Are they priests? Were they really? Or were they kind of like spiritual leaders? Guidance. Maybe tribal leaders. Things like that. Weather people. Medicine people. Do they really fit in the priest category? I don't think so. Just because they could commune with the spirits doesn't mean they're priests. No. No, no, no. Get out of my head. Let me be in my own head. Don't you tell me. I tell you. Sorcerer. This is like your evil magic caster. Right? This is anyone who uses magic to harm people. Sorcerer. Ah, you inflicted pain on me. You son of a bitch. You evil sorcerer / sorceress. How dare you? Don't do it again. Ow, you did it again. I am dead because I didn't have many hit points. The Warlock. This one, I'm not sure if I want to keep, but the idea is there. It's nice. The Warrior. Yes, the Warrior. This is your Warrior type. This is where you might see things like, and when coming up with a Warrior, what I like to think is first, when coming up with some archetypes, you might want to think, all right, do you want real world examples? Uh, or do you want setting examples? So, for example, real world examples of warriors might be like, all right, you got some Spartans, you have some Vikings, you have some samurai, uh, and the such. You know, oh, the samurai warrior, uh, the ninja warrior, the American ninja warrior. um, you know, like whatever types of warriors you can think of. The ranger. Oh, the ranger's a warrior. Yeah, they are part of the recon team, right? Oh, Ranger's a rogue. Oh no, that's the archetype splitting into other places. Oh shit, why? Why is the Ranger and the Rogue and the Warrior archetype? What has he done? Why? I don't know. Don't hurt me. Don't beat me. Just let me live. All right. Let me just ramble. You're listening to me. I don't know what your problem is. So anyway, by the way, I'm a little mental today just because I had an exhausting, stressful day, and this is how I'm handling it. So just relax. Just let me ramble. I like the support though if you're here and you're watching and you're enjoying this video. If not, you probably turned it off a while ago, but it's okay. Oh, an example of setting-based warriors. You know, you might have the orc slayers, right? Oh, we are the orc slayers and we slay orcs and that's what we do. Or you might have the, you know, like maybe named after a location, named after a. Some archetypes could be race-based, right? An example of that would be like maybe a certain elvish sect, like that they only teach to other elves, or a dwarven sect. Those tend not to be as popular because they're very limiting. Oh, I have to be this race to be that. Um, but it doesn't mean there aren't exceptions. Like for example, uh, let's say if Bruenor Battlehammer, right, from the Legend of Drizzt series, if he had a special warrior type. Let's say he was an orc crusher, right? He just crushes orcs all day. Let's just say that's what he does, right? Well, he adopted a Wolfgar and a Catti-brie. Okay, let's say normally you only can become an orc crusher if you're a dwarf. Oh, but they're my adopted children and I love them like they're my own, right? Well, you can't dispute that. You know, Bruenor, as stubborn as he is, he loves Catti-brie and he loves Wolfgar. All right, he would probably turn them into orc crushers if he could. You know, if that's what they wanted to do, he would just be like, well, they can be orc crushers. That would be the exception to the rule, for example. You know, we are the orc crushers. Obviously, there's no such thing as Bruenor Battlehammer being an orc crusher, you know, and, but it was just an example that I could think of where that might fit for an exception to the rule. Yeah, or you can get like location-based ones, like, oh, you know, I got the Misty Mountains Warcasters. You know, we learn special spells and abilities that are tied to from this area here, and it gives us our powers. So those are location-based archetypes, and those are also very limiting. What else? Oh, you know what I forgot? The Warlord. I personally like this one because for me it's an alternate bard, right? A bard may give you inspiration, and that gives you a die roll that you can put on skills or saving throws and sometimes attack rolls. Whereas the warlord is an alternate bard because it can give you, I'd say, a little more action economy, and it should be limited a little bit because you don't want to break the action economy too much. You don't want to become too powerful, but it should be unique in its own way to allow players to have fun, and I kind of like that. And should the warlord sacrifice their own action to do it? Well, that's no fun for the warlord, right? How's that fun for the player playing the warlord? Maybe a bonus action, um, like, oh, okay, I use my bonus action to grant you this. Or if you have like an attack feature and you have extra attack, you can sacrifice one of your attacks to let someone else do it, or something. I would say the best option might be to work off of bonus actions or reactions, as long as the outcome is not too powerful. As long as you're not giving someone such huge advantage that combat becomes trivial. You still want the class to be fun for the player, but you also want the abilities to be fun, maybe for other people if you're playing that type of class. Like you're purposely playing the warlord to help other people, right? It's kind of like, do I really want to sacrifice my action to give that person an action? Yes, it's a strategic choice, and I don't have to do it. But sometimes it's a pain in the ass. Sometimes it might be nice to be like, I hit, and then because of my bravery and you saw this and you got inspired, and now you feel the compulsion to use your reaction because I feel like it might not even have to be that base. It could be they have to use their reaction to use your warlord ability. You know, so I could be like, hey, yes, that player over there, you get this reaction. Oh, I used my reaction. Oh, darn. So you can't benefit from this. Okay, I'll have to give it to someone else. I think that might work. Um, or if it uses the Warlord's bonus action, for example, it can be an immediate thing that the other player does that doesn't use their reaction. That could also be another example. This one's going to be a long episode. Oh, no. Sorry. The Witch. I like this one. A lot of people were saying, and I don't like this. Why don't you just reflavor the warlock into a witch? And it just seems wrong to me. I don't know. I just always like the idea of the classic witch. And then some people start getting philosophical, like, well, it's a witch. What the fuck's a druid? Let me ask you that question. Give me the Gygax definition. Thank you. Um, what's a witch? And we have these clear images in our head, and yet when some people you give that to, they don't understand it, right? They'll still ask the same question. Well, you didn't answer my question. What do you mean I didn't answer your question? How about you're just not understanding what I'm saying? All right. When you picture a witch, right? You picture someone who normally has to give something up to obtain magic. There's some type of sacrifice involved. Not always, but there usually is. And one of the classic myths is like in Europe and in the United States, like during the colonies, when we had the great witch hunts and all that in the New England states, was they were thought to have believed to have sold their soul to the devil for their powers, right? That's what the classic thought is. And if you even go back into other mythology, like they might be called oracles, but other interpretation of witches too, or like the blind hags, like they don't have eyesight, but they have the power. So I would see it as a sacrifice that gives you power. And this class should be slightly more powerful in certain areas because they have to sacrifice something. And there should be a couple sacrificial choices, and it could purely be up to you. Uh, but the way I see it is there's the mechanical sacrifice, which might affect the game mechanically, like, oh, I'm blind, I'm deaf, I'm crippled, you know? Whereas there's the superficial sacrifice, like, oh, I can never find true love, I'm older, I, uh, I don't have a soul, you know? Those are things that I feel like that fuels the witches economy, you know. And another unique feature of the witch would be a coven. You belong to a coven. That's usually an important feature. Not always, but if you look at it, the three hags are a small little coven, and they share that ball, that they can see out of. Right, they're a little coven of witches there. Tends to be part of the lore is the coven. Like if you look at the Crucible, I don't know if you'd want to call them a coven of witches, but the witches would meet in the forest and they would dance and they would burn things, and they would practice the black magic. And to me, it's like it doesn't have to be a sisterhood. It could be anything. Just like the warlock didn't have to be a brotherhood. It could be whatever. But I just like the idea of the witch. I like the idea of having a coven, and that your coven could have special abilities and powers. And of course, a witch could have cauldron casting too, like if you have a cauldron, like certain spells you can cast from the cauldron, certain area effects, and it's really cool. It opens itself up for a lot of potential. and it's an unexplored area. And a lot of people are like, "Why is this reframe a warlock and you're a witch?" Yeah. Oh, it's so annoying. I hate it. I just don't get it. Warlocks are supposed to be like, evil beings that get their power from other worlds, and witches aren't always like that. Some witches might get blessed. They might get their power from somewhere else. But some witches are benevolent too. They're not all evil. That's the problem. Warlocks, I feel like they're strictly evil. I mean, D&D tries to work away with that, but they're pretty much evil. That's why I'm not sure if I want to do with them, but whatever. Keep them around for a little bit. Then there's the wizard, and this isn't the final list. This is just an idea. I feel like I'm missing something that I want on here, but I'm not sure what. I just feel I have a lot of W's: warlock, warlord, warrior, witch, wizard. That must be my favorite letter in the alphabet for this. Damn. So let's look at some of the subclass potential that some of these have. Oh yeah, the wizard. That's why I keep the wizard around. I remember now. Wizard's probably going to be permanent. So the artificer. You're wondering, okay, well, what's your artificer going to be like? Well, the artificer is going to have three archetypes of brass and iron. This person makes weapons and armor. There's going to be the alchemist. We all know what that is. Do we have to explain what the alchemist is? Which I probably could make that into a full-fledged class if I really wanted to, but it might make a more interesting subclass. That's where I'm conflicted. I feel like I could make a full-on alchemist class. And the tinkerer. They make the little, wow, tinkerer. Yep, they make the little clockwork things, little gadgets, cool things. Like think of like Batman, Batman the Artificer. Uh, well, the person who makes Batman's gadgets. Yeah, the Bard. Well, the Entertainer. Let's sorry, little sinus problem. Let's bring this up. There might be the Bard, Skald, Troubadour, the Dervish. You know, these are just some ideas to become brewing. But the person who's the entertainer, like I would see this as the warrior poet, inspiring entertainer, troubadour. Not too worried. What's this? This is a dancer, right? A dancer? Are they like a battle dancer? Troubadour is kind of like another poet, though, right? Yeah, they might get erased off the list. I don't know, but these are just ideas. The Berserker. This one I like. Boop, boop, doo, 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 doo. Because they have the Juggernaut. And you're probably wondering, oh shit, what's a Juggernaut, Dave? Well, let me tell you. The Juggernaut is kind of like this big, beefy berserker, right? Wears heavy armor and comes in the battlefield. They still get the rage with the half hit points, and they're like, bro. They're just supposed to be like the tank of tanks. You know what I mean? They just come. A raider, duh, they come in, right? And they're tasked with raiding, stealing. So you have your super tanky Juggernaut, right? Then you have your Raider. You're kind of like the skilled one out of all of them. You're probably like, well, where's your magic one? I could put a Warden, right? Would that work? Should I? Oh yeah, I think Warden is my third one. Let me look. Don't let me look. Oh wait, you're gonna read this, aren't you? Don't read it. These are all rough drafts, by the way. But oh crap, 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 crap. Juggernaut, Raider. Yeah, Warden. Warden is gonna be like the Magic Castery one. They're gonna have access to somewhat nature spells. Gladiator. This one I like too. And you're probably wondering, oh, why? This could be the warrior archetype, right? Well, like I said before, they're mainly fueled off of showboats, and showboats are where they get their power from. And a lot of the showboats, they can fuel themselves, but they can also demoralize opponents and stuff like that. But there's going to be Pantheon-based Gladiator archetype and a Mortalis. And the Mortalis one there is going to be like more like, like, oh, okay, this one's more mortal related, just basic gladiator stuff. And the Pantheon one, you're going to see like might be based off of like, I don't want to just strictly say like Greek mythology and Greek heroes and stuff, but you can get an idea of there. Like for example, if Perseus or Hercules might be some inspiration for some of the Pantheon traits, or they might get some powers like, oh, Medusa had powers. No, they don't specifically need a Medusa head. That's just an example, so they can kind of mix some trickery in there, or some magic or some skills or some extracurricular abilities. And that's really what I like about the Gladiator. Uh, I think they're pretty cool. The Jester, I have no idea. Oh, the Monarch. Yes, that could be a class. I forgot about that one. Oh, you. Let me get rid of your number. Boom. And boom. So anyway, the Monarch. These ones are cool. I don't know if this could be its own class, but I kind of just want it in there just in case, because I think that could be an alternate leader type. So Jester. Actually, that might be under Entertainer. You know what? Let's change Bard to Entertainer. All right. And we'll put a Jester in there for now. We'll keep that. We'll keep the Jester on the back burner. I think they'll definitely tell jokes. Jokes. Japes. Which, same thing. Juggling. Yes. Dancing. Silliness. Just to give me an idea. The Knight. Ooh, what is a Knight and why is it not a warrior subclass? That's a good question. Why is it not a warrior subclass? Well, there's a few ways we can look at the Knight. We could go Paladin, Templar, Samurai. But when I look at knights in this, I look at that they have a certain court that they belong to, and these courts might be a court. These might be what was I gonna say? Wow, lore based. Yep, lore slash setting based. There we go. They also belong to. No, they might not necessarily belong to anything, but that's an example. They might have a certain court that they belong to, and that court gives them certain abilities or features. A knight, they tend to have codes. Has a code. Starts as Squire. That's another thing the knight's gonna do. I find a little silly. You might find a little silly, but I like. They're gonna start off at D8 hit points. They're gonna go through their Squire phase, and then they hit Knighthood, and then they go to D10 hit points. And you're like, well, why would I want to play a knight if they're going to do that? That sounds terrible. Sounds like they're at a handicap. There are less hit points than a warrior. Why would I not just be a warrior? I don't know. It's all just kind of like, feeling around, coming up with ideas. Magician. You're like, okay, what's this? This is a little different than what you're thinking. This is Parlor Trick Magician or Grand Stage. And they're like your person that kind of does like, not real magic. They do that fake magic stuff. They're like a rogue alternate. Yeah, that's what they are. The rogue alternate martial artist. So we're gonna put in wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, judo. Stuff like that. Jiu-jitsu. Uh, Key energy. Not all of them are gonna use key energy. Just some of them. It depends on your style that you choose. Uh, Weaponry. Like you're gonna choose your style when you're a martial artist, and you can cross class. You can be an MMA fighter by when you know you go to select a new style, you can choose a new one, or you can continue on the path of the one and become better at it. So, for example, the wrestler might start off with some grapples, right? But then he might later have like double leg takedown, and then he might have like the ability to where he goes for the double leg, and then the same action he can swoop you up and slam you on the ground and do all this damage, and then get in an advantageous position in the grapple. Whereas a boxing might be really fast with his hands, or a kickboxer might have hard hitting kicks. Judo might be able to take an opponent and just throw them on the ground, things like that. Uh, Wrestler will be power top. Jujitsu, power bottom. Key energy will harness the energy within. This will be kind of like your magical monk, the one that can shoot the fireballs or get the key hits and stuff like that. And your weapon based one will be like, oh, I train with a sword, I train a bow staff, I got a nunchuck, that type. You can mix and match these. The martial artist will have different levels. You'll probably go from like whelping level all the way to grandmaster. And I think my cat wants to hang out. Uh-oh. He's putting his paws under the door. He's saying, let me in. Oh, you hear him? He wants to come in. I'll let him in for a little bit. Come on in. You want to say hi to everybody? Come here, buddy. Yes, you do. Now, if you've been in this video for about an hour and a half now, you're going to see Zion. He's so cute. Say hi, Zion. Yeah. He's one of the cats I have. He's a big, lovable mush monster. Got him from the pound. He's a good boy. But that's a story for another day. The Monarch. This one, I don't know. I like the idea. I had an idea for it. I forgot what it was. This is a while ago. I'd have to read some old notes of mine. I could get back to you on that one. But this is an alternate leader type. Let me put that. Maybe like king, queen, wow, czar, emperor, empress. What else is there? I don't know. But yeah, alternate leader type. They probably have D8 hit points in Monarch, honestly. Where did my cat go? This is why I don't let him in here. Oh, okay, he's right here. You silly. Don't come by the wires on the table. No, 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 no. This is bad. No, you're not gonna need this over. That's not gonna be so good. No, 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 no. How about you go up there? You go up there. How come you lay up there all the time when we're in here? But now that I'm doing this, you want to just be interrupting. Yes, you do. Do you want cute points? Is that what you want? You want cute points? He's got the cute points. Oh, he's my big chunky monkey. He weighs about 18 pounds. And you're thinking, oh, what a big cat. No, I've seen big cats. I've seen 30 plus pound cats. 18-pound cat ain't nothing. Priest. There we go. No, don't push that table. Don't push it. He's got a lot of power too, and he doesn't realize it. Oh, 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 my wire's caught. No. He's got a lot of power, and he doesn't realize it. Like, he can accidentally knock things over and stuff. Anyway, the priest. Judas. That's a joke. You know, the band Judas Priest. So we're going to put cleric, druid, voodoo, albumin, Wuxin, which I think is how the actual spelling of Wujian. I could be wrong. Um, what's the other one? Shinto, Buddhism. Those are some examples of some priests that you might want. And of course, you can put like, oh, I got a setting related one, snake priest. We'll put that as an example, snake priest, just so it's not all, it's real world and then it's some of that. Because I like to incorporate real world into my game. Players can connect on it on a more personal basis. Profit. You're wondering, okay, how is this going to be different? Psh, what is a prophet? Well, they're going to be people that the deity talks to directly, or at least claim they do. You're going to have the zealot. They're going to be people that take their faith too seriously, and they're going to live by the sword, and you die by the sword type thing. I guess I can't say it's 100%, but that's the way I see it. They're very think of a cult, right? If you ever play Far Cry 5, oh, the cat wants to go. Hold on. All right, kitty, if you want to go, you can go, buddy. All right, no, you wanna harass me? Okay. He's so weird. Go to the door, then he just came back. So think of Far Cry 5. They're a cult, a religious cult in that game, and they're all pretty much zealots, right? Like they're really into their faith, and they'll take it to the extreme if they have to. That's pretty much what this is going to be like. Um, what's the one that starts with an H? I have this all in a notebook that I wrote it down in, and I don't have the notebook in here. Heretic. This is the one that's going to get you with lies and stuff. This is the one who's going to tell you like the opposite of your deity, or your faith. So say your God or your faith is all about like living life and doing what you love as long as you don't hurt anyone else, right? Well, this one is going to like spread false rumors and lies about that. That's like the heretic there. That's what they're going to do. There's the Messiah, which they're going to be the one that's been promised. They're going to come in. They're going to be pretty cool and powerful. They're going to work off of. I don't know if the prophet has it all. Uh, maybe the Messiah does, but I think they're going to have. Maybe they all do. Conversion points is how they fuel their powers. Like the more people they convert to the faith, the stronger they become. The more powers they have available to them. And I think that's going to be something that's really cool. Like, for example, the Messiah is going to have a feature called Universally Speaking, where no matter what, and the Messiah can control it, like, they can have you not understand them, but if they want you to hear what they're saying, no matter what language you understand, you hear it in your language when they talk. And when you talk to them, they hear it back to you or they understand you like that's going to be like a built-in feature that they have you know um, written right in. I think the saint might be one of them. These are just some examples of the prophets that I have. Rogue, let's get on to rogue here. I'm not sure what I want to do. I might call this one recon. Let's see, scout, ranger, thief, assassin. See, we had the ranger, right? Where did we have the ranger earlier? Oh, we didn't, did we? No, we didn't. Okay. Shaman. I like the shaman. Shaman is cool. But you like all your classes. You said that about all of them. You liked it. Well, I guess I wouldn't put it in if I didn't like it. You know what I mean? Shaman. Wind Whisperer. This one is going to be a shaman that specializes in the elements. All shamans, you're going to have a basic understanding and power of the spiritual realm, the nature and element realm, and the bestial animal realm. Um, there's going to be the Wind Whisperer, where they specialize. Well, the cat's in my jacket. They specialize in that. They get access to the ability to call like more powerful spells and control the elements. Like, oh, maybe lightning's coming down. I can call a lightning storm. I can cause a blizzard to happen. I can make that fire erupt into a fireball. That's the Wind Whisperer. Then there's the Spirit Talker, which they're the one that can cross over, like to the spirit realm. Like just imagine they're sitting there in their meditative trance and they go and they're talking to the spirits and communing, and then they come back. That's the spirit talker. And then there's my favorite, the skinwalker. And you're like, oh, what the hell? What is the skinwalker? Well, what the skinwalker is it's a shaman that can transform into bestial form, and you're like, oh, well, the druid can already do that with wild shape. No, it's not that. It's the midway point. Like, picture a wolf man, right? Not when he's in werewolf form, and not when he's in human form, but when he's in the hybrid form. That's what the shaman spirit skinwalker going to do is going to have. They're going to have the ability to be in this hybrid form, and it's going to be really cool because there's different animals that you can choose from. Like for example, there might be the antler beasts, and those are things like deer and elk and moose. So your skinwalker might be a hybrid between one of those and the human. And each beast that you choose to present yourself in comes with its advantages and disadvantages, well, not disadvantages, but it's advantages. It's going to reinforce certain stats. Obviously, your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma will stay the same because that's your internal, that's your brain, that's your control, right? The external force is going to be your strength and your wisdom and your constitution. That's what's going to change. And you might get certain abilities, like if there's the monkey skinwalker, right? They might get more attacks. They might not damage as much, but they get more attacks. And the skinwalker, one thing with the shaman is they may have D6 hit points, but one of their prime stats is Constitution, and that's because they have to. In most of the world, to become a shaman, you have to have like a not only like a deep understanding of the spirit and the natural realm, but you have to have a near-death experience. Whether something that you almost die, but you survive and you come out stronger. Um, and I want that represented not only with just a high constitution, where they're able to withstand more, but also to like death saving throws. Like, oh, at first a shaman might need 4 failed death saving throws to die, and then later on the spirit talker might only need 2 uh, death saving throws to pass, stuff like that. The skinwalker could be a pseudo front lineman, because think of it this way. All right, con is one of your points, right? If you beef up your con, let's say you got a 17 con at level 1, or you got +3 hit points, you got your 6 hit points, you got 9 hit points. It's not the best, but it's decent. And if you tack on like a tough feature there, where you got 2 extra hit points, you're looking pretty diesel. And if you equip the right skinwalker, like, all right, I'm going for a tough animal. I'm going to be a gorilla. I'm going to be a rhino. They might have more armor and they might have more constitution, so that might also beef up your hit points and your survivability. So that cooped with the ability to kind of cheat death a little with the death saves, or the innate ability to call the spirits once in a while to aid you for advantage on a ability check or saving throw, can make the shaman have a lot of survivability, and it's probably my favorite class on the list. Like, oh, you know what? I didn't get into uh, a unique class. There, you're probably wondering what that is. Sorcerer, not too worried about at the moment. Warlock, not too worried. Uh, Warlord, here's another one of my favorites. This is going to be based on 3 basic ideas that I have for a Warlord. There's the Butcher, right? The Conqueror, and Defender. And you're probably wondering, okay, what is the difference between the 3? The Butcher is a warlord who goes out there, they command the battlefield, and what their purpose is to rape and pillage, right? They go across the land, they kill the people, the women and children, the animals, they burn down the buildings, and they salt the fields. That's the Butcher. All right, the Conqueror. The Conqueror goes from land to land, and they don't do it to kill the people. They do it to expand the kingdom's territory. And what they do is they integrate your culture and their culture. So, say for example, think of Xerxes of Persia, right? He may or may not have been a warlord, but we'll use him as an example. He took the Persian army around, and he went around these lands, and he acquired them. Now, picture this: he comes, and he's like, "Hey, give me this offering. Fall under our kingdom's banner. Blah blah blah. If you resist us, we'll fight you, or you can come peacefully. We'll let you retain some of your culture, so you can have that little bit of unique identity. But at the same time, we're going to influence you with our culture." That's the conqueror. And then the defender goes, and they're the warlord that kind of sits at home, defends their base because they get raided a lot, they get attacked a lot, and they have to, come up with, they have to defend themselves. Pretty much, that's the defender, and they're all going to be very unique. The butcher might do things where they inflict more damage or have status effects or ailments because they just are hell bent on destruction, death, and they don't want anyone in their way. The conqueror is going to be kind of probably a little more skill based, a little more skills because social skills especially because they're going to want to preserve culture, whereas spreading their own. And the defender, defense based. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Like, hey, I need to defend this fort. I need to defend this country. I need to defend this territory. And if you look at some like strategies too from Chinese warlords, there's like, for example, the empty fort strategy, where they trick the enemy into thinking something perilous is inside a fort when they needed to defend that point. So, say the opposing army's coming up, right? And there's the one lone man who's sitting on top of the fort and he's playing a flute. Now, the enemy's like, what the hell is that? What is going on? And they're freaking out. They don't know what to do. Right? That's an example of, I'd say, like kind of like a defender warlord, the empty fort strategy. Might not be the best, but it's kind of one that I have in mind, and I like it. It kind of gets me thinking. All right, you know what? That makes sense. Might not work for you. It works for me, and I mean, the aim. Don't get me wrong. The aim is to get it to work for the player, to put an idea. That's why we see the druid as we see it. That's why we see the bard as we see it, because through those games and through those definitions and through ingraining that in our brains, that's how they got it to work for us. Whether that was the original meaning, intention, or not, that is how it works for us now. The warrior. Here we go. You're wondering, well, why is the berserker not under there? It's certainly a berserker warrior, right? Why is the gladiator not under there? Or the knight? Oh, well, I'm glad you asked, because I don't want him to be. Told you. Big enough to be classes. What warriors should we have? Samurai? The ranger? Look, samurai made it back instead of ranger. The Viking? The Apache warrior. What other warrior types are there? My brain is farting right now. I don't know. My brain is melting. I've been doing this for almost 2 hours. I'm sorry. So we'll leave it at that for now. Which sacrifice for power, Coven based, some cauldron spells. Wergeldir. Now this is my own personal class. It may or may not make it. I kind of wanted something unique. And you're probably thinking, well, what do you mean by unique? Um, I mean unique in name. I want someone to look at it and be like, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. What does that mean? Well, let's first get down to Wergeld and what that means. And that is the Old Germanic. And what that stands for is man price, or pretty much like the price of uh, what something would cost, like the price of a finger, an arm, a hand. If you were to kill someone, what price is that in monetary value? So they had this whole list of Wergeld and what the prices of things were. Like if you were to kill this type of person that was a part of this caste, what would that cost you? If you were to take this person's hand, how much would that cost you? Well, the Wergelder is going to be a type of mercenary that's going to blend combat and arcane magic. And I think it's something that a lot of people have been wanting. And I know there's the Eldritch Knight, uh, but I believe they wanted something on the level of the Paladin or the Ranger, you know, where it's like, all right, they have 5 levels of casting, they're a bit stronger. Well, that's where where Geldiers kind of come in. They're gonna have the simple, the martial weapons, all the armor, the shields, and the arcane magic to an extent. They're not going to be overbearing, where there's this unstoppable force, but they're going to come in there like that. So they're going to be your magical tanks, uh, full armor, full weapons, half caster, and oh wait, I'm sorry, half arcane caster. See, and I think that's going to draw people in. Is it the best word to describe that? No, certainly not. And you're wondering, well, why would you use Wergeld to describe that? Well, I'm thinking of it as in man price, and I'm putting a little, like maybe a bounty hunter, a mercenary, uh, but also kind of like in their own personal, like well, what's the life price that I have? Like what price did I pay? And I attached an IER on the end of it to kind of say, hey, that's like my profession. That's what I do. That is what I am. I am the Wergeldier. I fight and I cast magic. Like I might swing my sword at you, but then quickly turn around and shoot a fireball at your face, type thing. And like I said, it's a work in progress. It's an idea. And my last favorite is the wizard. Uh, since I already have a magician, I want a wizard. And I'm not gonna. I don't feel like you need as many as they have. I feel like you need some core ones. You just need your basic, your necromancer, enchanter, and your illusionist, and your summoner. Summoners are good too. Don't say conjurer. I mean, yeah, you could have a conjurer, but I like summoner, and I think these are good. The four ones, and then your kind of your universal one there. Um, those, in my opinion, work best. Everything else, I don't know. Do you really need a transmuter, an abjurer, a diviner? Maybe some people like it, but I like these the best. Necromancer, all right, deals with life and death and such. The enchanter, tons of enchantment magic, power up items, weapons. Illusionist, we know what that is. Summoner brings creatures to the battlefield, and just your basic wizard. This is where the other spells could kind of like fall into place, and I'm sure you could blend a few of them in here. Like this necromancer can get like maybe vampire teeth or like ghoul arms or something. Like I got ghoul arms, I have lich fingers. Don't make me touch you with the lich fingers. They're very icy cold, and they will put you into a catatonic sleep. So, let's look back at what we did. Oh, we did a lot. Ah, yes, the TV chucking class. I totally forgot about that, the techno beat. Let's forget that ever happened, shall we? Oh, yeah. So let's find out what roles some of these play. Artificer. This one's a quest driver, right? Because you need quests to kind of maybe get the materials you need for the brass and iron. This person makes weapons and armor, and they might be able to enhance them a bit, not magically, but through their craft. They'll be master craftsmen. I would personally like this craft character, especially as a role player. I love the role playing aspect more than I love the combat aspect. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind the combat aspect, but I love, love, love the role playing aspect, and I think that would be really cool. Alchemist could be anything. Could be buffer, debuffer, or healer. Really? Wait a minute. Where did you get your... Boom. Yay, we did it. So, Tinkerer. Yeah. What does the Tinkerer do? Oh, yeah, I forgot. There's also zone control. That's combat. Oh, wait. There. Alchemist could do that too. Tinkerer could do that with its gadgets. Entertainer. We all know what that is. That's like a buffer. They're gonna buff the crap out of you. They might debuff their enemies. They might be the leader. Yay. Berserker. Oh, pretty much the tank. Tank. The raider may be a little bit skilled, but they're mainly tank. So tanky. Morden might have a little bit of the other stuff in here, like the healer. They might do a little healing and stuff. Gladiator, tank. The Pantheon might be the one that has some of these other roles in there. I don't see as a. You know what? I want to add a follower in there. Uh, there. I know what you're thinking. Like, well, there's leader, there's a follower. I don't see the entertainer. It's like a pseudo leader or a follower. Artificer, yeah, follower. Berserker, more of a follower. However, the warden might be so big and buff that he wants to lead because he feels it's right to lead, or the warden might lead because it's greater purpose. Gladiator, I don't Maybe the Pantheon. Mortalis, no. Pantheon, maybe. Knight, yeah, the leader type. Uh, like, I am the knight in charge. You shall follow me. I am the tank. Yes, yes, yes. I have a quest. I have this important quest, definitely. Any of these things? Probably not. Maybe debuffer, you know, zone of control. I don't think so. I don't think so whatsoever. Magician. This is going to be the skilled person. They don't deal in magic. They're parlor tricks and stuff. They use misdirection. That's what they're going to be for. Oh, wait, you know what I didn't put assassin under? Warrior. Yeah, assassin is also under here. Yep. Eat that. Martial artist. Probably a follower. Mini tank. Quest driver maybe to follow their learn more martial arts to get stronger, to get better. Monarch, definitely a leader, like no question. Need to present. Definitely not any of these. Quest driver, certainly. Um, Probably skilled. They would have to know some skills. I feel like if you're a leader, you're gonna be, um, you're gonna know like probably how to fight. You're gonna know history. You're gonna know the areas around you. You're gonna know different languages. Maybe if it's beneficial to you, it's definitely a good idea. And especially if you feel uh, like maybe if, a threat to your power. Feel like, well, I should learn these languages so I at least have one up on my enemy. Um, what else? Priest, definitely magic. I don't really want to use the term, but we'll call it magic. Uh, magic miracles, blah blah blah. This is the easiest term to get across, is what people understand. So we'll say they use magic, probably zone of control. They can probably control the battlefield with some, but not as much as a sorcerer or a wizard. Maybe probably a lot of buffing. Some might have a little debuffing depending on what type they are. Leader role potential, yes. Priest does have leader role potential, but sometimes they can be a follower. And a quest driver too. Like I'm on a quest to do an exorcism or to heal this village. So prophet, super big leader potential, quest potential, buffer, healer, all that stuff. Rogue, follower. Say very very little leader potential. Not really a tank. Definitely the skilled behind the lines type character. As a follower and skilled behind the lines character. Shaman, leader type. Could be a leader. Mini tank for at least for the skinwalker. Uh, Zone of control and such. Magic, buffer, debuffer, healer. I feel like those are important roles for the shaman, sorcerer, magic. Yep, it's magic. Zone of control, warlock. Oh, let's take the warlock out of here. I don't even like you, warlock. Get off my list. There, no warlock love. You're gone. Warlord, definitely a leader. Tank. Um, I don't want to say a buffer, but zone of control definitely, because you're giving zone of control to your allies there, and you're giving them the ability to do stuff. So and quest potential. Warrior, tank, leader or follower. Uh, Geldier, probably leader, most likely a follower. Zone of control and magic. Oh yeah. Witch, definitely. Yeah. So anyway, you get the idea. I rambled a lot. I'm sorry today's topic was a little bit long. I had a lot to talk about. Um, as you can see, I'm tired. My eyes are red. Had a long day. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, please tune in next week. Next week, we're going to talk about character development and background. So let's put a little note in my page. Boom, boom, boom. Character development and background. There we go. And we'll do that next week. But until then, I'll see y'all later. Thanks for coming, and I appreciate anyone who stopped by. Have a good evening.